team. And we, in the past 3 years, and we have been working with many central banks worldwide in supporting their central bank digital currency journey. And it's very clear that many central banks at this stage are looking at CBDC from different motivation, and some are trying to leverage CBDC to address payment modernization problem, and some are looking at as a way to just address challenge from cross-border payment. Some are looking at CBDC as a way to just create competition to just make the financial service provision becoming better. And others also looking at CBDC to solve problem of financial inclusion. So for today, that we have a great panel where that's they come from different continent and covering different spectrum of CBDC maturity, and from the use case that they really just coming from different use case. So in that. This just remind me, of the conversation I started when I was still with the World Bank, and then we using innovation to solve, financial inclusion have always been a passion for me for many years. And now that we see the technology really just becoming available for central banks, and now that central banks are on the forefront to just bring the right technology to the folks who are excluded or who are not included in the economic opportunities. And so with that, and I like to just have the speakers to introduce themselves, and then we can just get the conversation going. And of course that during the session, feel free to just use the ask the speaker to ask any questions, and of course you can also just chat from the chat channel, and then we try to bring your questions by the end of the conversation. With that, I'd like to just have Fabiola to just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Fabiola Herrera. I'm Deputy Manager of the Central Bank of the Dominican Republic. My areas of concentration in this point of my career are innovation, IT, cybersecurity, and payment systems. I've been in the Central Bank for the past 27 years. Now I began in IT, then I moved to payment systems, to the world of payments, and now I'm leading the innovation efforts in the central bank regarding CBDC, cybersecurity too, and more inclusive payment systems. I've been around in a whole for maybe 40 years, but I've been able to evolve, and otherwise I wouldn't be here talking to you. So this is a good thing, and this proves that even if you coded in COBOL or RPG, you can still be talking about CBDC today. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Xiaochen. Thank you, the Payments Canada Summit, and really delighted to share our journey.
Perfect, Fabiola. Now let's move to Jim.
Yeah, thanks. Jim Cunha. I'm an executive vice president at the Boston Fed. I've also been around for a long time, 37 and a half years. And my entire career has been in technology, payments, innovation, and security. And I'm leading a lot of the technology research into central bank digital currency. And I should say that these are my words, not necessarily those of the Federal Reserve System, but it's a real pleasure to be here.
And now let's move to Francisco.
Hey, Xiaochen, you're really putting me on the spot. I just landed here. Technical problems, as you know, with the VPNs.
Right.
What was the question? Sorry.
Okay, so that's just first move to Maxwell, and then you can introduce yourself. Give you a minute to have a break. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Xiaochen. I'm Maxwell Opoku-Afari. I've also been around close to 30 years. in the last 5 years, since 2017, I've been the first deputy governor of the Bank of Ghana, being responsible for economic policy more broadly, but also having oversight for payment systems, FinTech, and innovation. Prior to going back to the Bank of Ghana in 2017, I spent 8 years as a mission chief and deputy division chief at the International Monetary Fund, IMF, here in Washington, D.C. I'm happy to be here to share the Bank of Ghana's experience with the CBDC design.
Thank you. So now that's Francisco.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. I'm Francisco Rivadeneyra. I'm Director of CBDC and FinTech Policy at the Bank of Canada, working with a wide team across the bank, from information technology services, researchers in various departments, looking at the integration of policy, research, and technical capabilities. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So when I see that this is an awesome panel, you can see from their background, we have from North America, South America, we have Africa, and then all represented here. And then all of them have been involved in innovation or driving innovation on behalf of their, organization for a long time. And I think, their insight definitely be very exciting for me, and hopefully also for all of you who are, at audience. And with that, let me just start to ask each one of you where each of your respective countries are with the exploration and implementation of your central bank digital currency. And again, start from Fabiola.
Thank you. First, I need to make this clarification. We have a very reliable payment system, national payment system, that we implemented with the help of the World Bank back in 2006. Having said this, through all these years, we've been able to interconnect all the private payment system to this central RTGS platform. And we have real-time payments since 2014. So we have this ecosystem, we have all the financial institutions included, we have other players, we have fintechs also coming into the system. And so we've been asking ourselves the questions: why CBDC? Why do we need CBDC? Why CBDC gives us the opportunity to improve the efficiency, to improve financial inclusion. As you know, we are a country where more than half the population is unbanked. So we really need to focus on that and to solve that problem. So 2 years ago, we began exploring CBDC and what it could offer us as a central bank in order for us to provide another platform for unbanked people. So this is our main interest, how this can provide a channel through which unbanked people can be part of the economy and can improve their life conditions. Also, we have a big interest in remittances and cross-border payments, because we have already been exploring that, and we think it can be improved a lot. We have a payment system with Central American countries that we are the central hub, and it's like an interconnection of RTGS. So 2 years ago, we began talking about this. We have an internal group that is led by the governor himself, and it's a multi-departmental team. We have payment systems, of course, we have IT, and we have monetary policy, because central banks are, though the economists are the cornerstone of the central banks. So they have to be included too, and they are very, very interested because they want to know the effects of this in the monetary policy. So at this point, we have a document, like a white paper, and it's for internal use still, and we're looking for the support of the IMF in order to move forward. So there's where we are.
Yeah, thank you. So it was great to see you last week during the annual meeting for the CBDC workshop, and the great contribution to the workshop. Yeah. And Jim?
Yeah, thanks. So let me separate this from policy to technology. On the policy side, we've got the Board of Governors in Washington that on early February issued a public consultation paper that runs through May 20th. So we're really looking for input from all parts of the ecosystem as to what are the potential costs and benefits of a retail CBDC. At the same time, the Biden administration, the White House, issued an executive order for a number of studies to be done about various aspects of cryptocurrency, stable coins, but also of a central bank digital currency. So that's really on the policy side. On the technology side, we've been running a project for about a year now called Project Hamilton, which is that we're working with MIT to build a prototype central bank digital currency, a general purpose. We finished the first phase, and that is to build basically the processing engine, the engine that would mint the money, store and move the money at scale and very resiliently. We published the results of that work in early February, and then did something that we have never done before. We created an open source license for the code so others can learn from the technology we built. And now we're moving into the new phases of looking at some of the challenging policy questions. We have no charge to go to pilot or production, but we're continuing to research things like privacy, programmability. How do you ensure the integrity of the money, potentially offline? So we're working through a number of issues. And then lastly, the New York Fed is doing work under the BIS Innovation Center on the wholesale side of CBDC. They're just now starting their work under something called Project Cedar. So that's really in a nutshell where we are relative to CBDC policy and technology.
Thank you very much, Jim, and definitely enjoyed reading the Project Hamilton paper. And I think everyone in the industry learned a lot from that pilot. Yeah, thank you. Or study. So now, Maxwell.
Thank you very much, Xiaochen. Let me look at it from this point of view. Ghana, as part of a number of sub-Saharan African countries, have made significant progress when it comes to financial inclusion in the last 5 or 10 years. And this has become possible as a result of deepening mobile money usage in most of these countries in sub-Saharan Africa. But what we've realized is that despite the gains we've made so far, financial inclusion has been limited by the availability of power and communication network infrastructure. As a central bank, we took the decision to say that, yes, we still need to push financial inclusion. And one way of doing that is to bring it on board CBDC, being led by the central bank, because mobile money was being led by telcos and other mobile money organization, but the CBDC was going to be led by the central bank. And we see it as, from the policy point of view, that once it's being led by the central bank, we introduce the CBDC and design it to be inclusive. It will promote financial inclusion. It will spur competition in the payment systems. It will strengthen monetary policy transmission channels. It will provide consumers with a platform or a public form of money for the digital era, and it will also reduce costs of payment services and payment service delivery. We have actually launched a CBDC pilot, so we've really moved ahead and launched a pilot. And the design of that pilot looked at it from 4 key pillars: governance, interoperability, infrastructure, and then inclusiveness. So under the governance, the Bank of Ghana will be the issuer of the CBDC. And then the commercial banks will be in charge of the distribution. And when it comes to interoperability, we are building the CBDC on the existing architecture that was being used by the mobile money framework, which the central bank in 2007 set up its own subsidiary called the Ghana Interbank Payments and Settlement Systems that provided a common switch and platform. That's where all our clearing services are. That's where our RTGS is. So we have that framework that has allowed interoperability between mobile money wallets and bank accounts. And we are going to build on that architecture to ensure that the CBDC becomes interoperable. And the inclusiveness will make sure that digital money is accessible to everyone and trusted by anyone. And infrastructure is what I've designed. And the CBDC is going to be designed or has been designed. As we speak now, the pilot is ongoing, and the results from the survey from the pilot is looking very good, to the extent that in the next 2 weeks or so, the pilot will be officially launched. We're doing the dry run to be able to test the infrastructure, the framework, and the design. And then we're going to do the official launch of the pilot, where we've selected 2 banks, 2 fintech companies, the central bank itself, and we've selected communities, because we are also to promote inclusion. We want to ensure that offline technology is key and critical, because the disadvantage that I highlighted was the lack of power and then availability of network communication infrastructure. So the offline technology is really what's going to drive inclusion. And we are testing that in the rural communities, and we're getting excellent results from that. So we're going to have a 2 kind of tier architecture for the CBDC. The first one is that the ECD we call it ECD. The original currency for Ghana is called the CD. So the CBDC, we call it ECD. The ECD, the Bank of Ghana will be minting this ECD, storing it, and destroying it. That's the governance aspect. Then the commercial banks will be distributing this ECD and having value-added services on top of that. The commercial banks will be interfacing with merchants and consumers, and we also are allowing specialized deposit-taking institutions, non-bank financial institutions, fintechs to also work along with the commercial banks to interface with consumers and also merchants. And we believe that the CBDC will enable a lot of financial inclusion and enhance payment systems delivery. When it comes to offline payments, with having inclusion in mind, we expect the ECD to ensure that we have consecutive offline payments happening with the existing architecture. We also are able to track transaction history even when it's offline. We're also able to have data storing even when it's offline, and we're also able to ensure access to financial services when it's offline. And it's also able to provide variety for different people in terms of the use of the ECD.
Maxwell, you probably also already answered my next question, and that's just having Francisco to share where does Bank of Canada stand in their development, and then when we go back to the second question, and you can finish that part. Yeah.
Thank you, Xiaochen. From the point of view of the Bank of Canada, it started as a research project. The Bank of Canada has been researching e-money and e-payments for almost a decade. So we have a long experience of understanding the issues in the market. And as part of that, there were lots of experimentation. Many of you might remember Project Jasper, which Payments Canada was a big part of. But in 2020, the Bank of Canada moved from research to a positioning that is called a contingency plan, making preparations to the eventuality to need to issue. And I should stress, very importantly, that at the moment, the bank doesn't see a need to issue. And anyway, eventually, the decision is the government's decision, not the Bank of Canada's. So that's important to mention. What does contingency plan mean? It means building the capacity, human capital, technical investments, research, to understand what are the trade-offs in the design, the implications of a CBDC before the decision is made. Now, from the point of view of the Bank of Canada, the bank has articulated 2 scenarios that potentially could motivate the issuance of a CBDC. The first one is an economy in which cash has become hard to use. And this is problematic mostly for its distributional implications, right? Most people are moving to electronic means of payments willingly out of the convenience or other factors. But what happens to the ones that are left behind? So that's an important role that a central bank has to fulfill, having a universally accessible means of payment. And the other scenario is one in which a digital currency not denominated in Canadian dollar starts making inroads in the economy and threatening monetary sovereignty. So those are the 2 scenarios. Might not be all the scenarios that could be considered by the government, but from the point of view of the Bank of Canada, these are important ones that we should monitor. So that in a nutshell is what the Bank of Canada is working on: building the capacity, exploring the technology, understanding the technology by getting our hands dirty, working on the policy front, understanding the trade-offs, and of course we need to do quite a bit of economic research to understand the trade-offs and implications of the potential issuance of a CBDC.
Thank you. So yeah, if I summarize it correctly, and each one of you are at stage to assemble the right people to ask the right questions, and also through research or POC or pilot, try to answer some of the questions. From the questions, most of you categorize in two categories. One is the policy question, which need to be addressed by a broader, stakeholder group within the government or within the country. And, central bank is a key part of that, but may not be the only party. And then from the technology part, that the central banks leading, the past POC and try to, understand what is the possibility from the technology side, and then bring that back, for the decision-making process. And I think this is definitely what you have shared also reflect the whole world, basically where we are at each country in their CBDC journey. And, asking question, answer question, POC pilot, and then to using research to do that. A very interesting part of that is, through that, process, and we have heard a lot central banks taking this from at beginning as more, very clear agenda, very clear policy goals to be looking at the policy trade-offs. See that, there are multiple objectives. Some objectives may even just are in conflict with each other, and then see that what trade-off need to be made to make it just working for the specific motivation or objectives. So in that's moving to the financial inclusion part, where it's very clear that financial inclusion is still a problem for the world, and there's data has been shared a lot within all international community. Large portion of the population worldwide still underbanked or unbanked. So then how to just using CBDC to potentially solve the problem. And in each country, as you hear, that they are at different stage in addressing that problem from the existing technology, existing solutions. And from CBDC side, what value can CBDC bring to the whole toolkits that central banks and the government have? And there that I want to also bring the cost of financial inclusion into the discussion, where that's mostly that we have a paper which is not published around CBDC for financial inclusion. We summarize mainly 4 categories of cause of financial exclusion, and including the economic cost, which is basically the shadow economy. Many of the citizens working in the shadow economy, and which are not in the formal economy. It's a cash-based economy, so then they cannot really just use the banking service. And there are also cultural barriers where that citizens, because of the trust-related issue, self-include themselves from the financial system. Then there's also the market barrier, where that's the certain population are being taken as unbanked, not like their profile status and all that is not basically commercially viable for commercial sector to provide them financial services. Then there's also the technology barriers, where that they don't have the technology to participate in the financial system. So those are some of the costs that we have seen. And my question to this panel is that number one, that's in your country, and from the current discussion, how CBDC is, addressing some of these barriers that, maybe I have included, or maybe there's additional ones you want to bring into the discussion. And another perspective to that is the design side, because as, Maxwell already mentioned some of that. And if you have financial inclusion as a policy objective, and when you design your CBDC, what are the key considerations to make your CBDC really, just deliver the result as promised? So then that's start from, again, Fabiola.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes, I was muted. Sorry. I have four main key points in this question. First, I want to say that financial inclusion is a really complex problem. We've been working on a national policy on financial inclusion that will be issued in the next few months, and in that we are including technology as a facilitator for financial inclusion. But having said this, then the second point is that technology should be used in a way that it does not promote exclusion. It should be used to promote inclusion. Today, in our current situation, the technology is running so fast and it's being used by the financial system in every way. So the clients and all the bank customers are using it 200%, since the pandemic, even more. But is this technology available for the unbanked? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they are um, ready to be using it for financial purposes. I don't know, because there's a huge cultural gap between the people already included in the financial systems and those who are not. And those who are not, we had a survey a couple of years ago. They are not part of the financial system, not because they can't. It's because they don't want to be a part of the financial system. And this is a very tricky answer that we need to address in a totally different way that we are doing right now. So my second point was this: technology should not create exclusion, but inclusion. My third point is the CBDC the right and the only solution to fill this gap between the unbanked, the excluded people from the financial system? Is CBDC the only solution? I'm not sure. I don't have the answer at this point. And also, if it is the solution for filling this gap, it should be so simple to use that unbanked people would prefer it rather than using cash, which is the competition now for the CBDC is cash. It's not other type of transactions, cards, payment instruments. No, it's cash. Those people use cash. So CBDC is competing with cash. So a CBDC should be issued in such a way that they would prefer to use it instead of using cash. Given this, then it should be token based, it should be retail, it should be offline, like Maxwell said, because we also have the same problem that maybe Jim and Francisco, they don't have, but we do have an issue in connectivity. So the conditions of the CBDC in our country should be related to those needs that this population have. And most of all, it should be very simple to use.
Yeah, for the rest of speaker, you can address my question. You can also address Fabiola's question there that I think some are very interesting, especially the one, do you think, for example, Jay, that cash and the CBDC are in competition, or what's, are the relationship between the cash and the CBDC? In addition to the question I already have.
Yeah, I mean, I'll address that first. The bottom line is all payment systems are in competition with each other. Whether you go to a cash register and pull out money or a check or a debit card or a credit card or EBT or any other card, it is a competition. That's healthy. That's what we want, is competition amongst these products. But our goal is not to get rid of cash if we did issue a CBDC. But back to financial inclusion, there's a question in the chat about whether it is an objective for the U.S. This is my personal opinion, is we're not going to solve financial inclusion unless, as you say, it's a policy goal. If it's a policy goal, you'll build it differently. You have different motivations. I also personally think that, cash is a public good. You don't pay money to get cash. I don't think you should have to pay money to get a CBDC. I think it should be, free or near free and very fast. And if you make it that way, and if you make it with the public policy goal, to Fabiola's point and to Maxwell's point, you have to worry about accessibility, offline, ease of use. All those things have to be there. But also, I think the what's going to make it help solve the problem is the private sector. So the private sector, I think, will innovate on top of a CBDC. In the U.S., we've got, it's not a huge number, but it's still an important number. I think over 5% are unbanked, but up to 20% are underbanked, where you may have a bank account, but you still go to a check casher and pay exorbitant fees, and then you may get money orders, and then you may send remittances back to your home country for exorbitant fees. All that can be done if designed well with the private sector through a CBDC. But also, as Fabiola says, it's not, CBDC is not going to magic. It's not going to magically solve all the problems with financial inclusion, but I do think it's a tool that can help with the right policy goal, the right, fee or lack of fee structure, and then strong innovation out of the private sector. I really think more generally, the innovation in the private sector is going to create use cases that we can't even think about. But the actual designation of the policy goals will be done through dialogue with the government and the leaders of policy within Washington. So I personally think it's got a lot of potential, and that should be our direction. But I don't set the policy.
Thank you, Maxwell.
Thank you very much. I think I also agree with the points made by Fabiola and also by Jim. From the Bank of Ghana point of view, and speaking for the sub-region as a whole, financial inclusion, the traditional method in terms of brick and mortar, the traditional commercial banks have not been able to deepen financial inclusion until we had mobile money coming in, and we've seen the jump in financial inclusion because of mobile money. And the mobile money has helped with financial inclusion because of the interoperability between the mobile money and the banking sector, and also ability to deliver financial services using the mobile money. Now, but even that one has been limited by connectivity and network architecture. So in the design of the CBDC to move financial inclusion forward from the Bank of Ghana point of view, our policy objective has been to ensure that we go beyond the last mile beyond connectivity. So that's the policy objective, the last mile beyond connectivity. So once we get there, then we'll be able to deliver offline services to those who are beyond connectivity. And that is how our existing CBDC pilot has been designed, to be able to ensure that once we're able to get beyond those who are beyond connectivity and get them on board with the CBDC. And as Fabiola said, it has to be easy to use, not complicated, and it has to be fast. Once we get all that, because of the existing interoperability, all these people are then brought into the formal financial services delivery. They have access to that, and then we're able to then deliver financial services through innovation and programmability of the CECD to those who are beyond connectivity. And that has been the policy objective in the design of our pilot.
And Francisco?
Thank you. And as we get into opinions here, I should stress that these are mine and not necessarily the ones of the bank. But let me answer the question from a use case that we know really well today. Cash fulfills a very important role in the monetary system. And what I mean with the monetary system is all the payment instruments and all the regulatory framework that allows for efficient market exchange. So cash provides a universally accessible, safe, and basic means of payment to anyone that wants to participate in exchange in a market economy. So the way we can think about financial inclusion in Canada is not from the developmental point of view. from the point of view of universal access, right? So as the digital economy grows as a larger portion of the economy, there might be a role of CBDC of providing that basic safe means of payment to everyone in new forms of transacting, for example, online. But there might be another aspect, and in particular important for Canada, which is given the vastness of the country, we need to think about also the geography of it, right? In Canada, more than 95% of adults have access to a bank account and therefore potentially access to an electronic means of payment. There might be underbanked pockets, but the question potentially we can recast it as having a basic universal means of payment that can be used potentially in offline situations or potentially for marginalized communities. So that's kind of the way we can approach this. And similar to what Jim hinted, it has to be a working relationship with the private sector in which there are solutions that complement public money and they are not displaced or entirely in competition in different use cases.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, that I think the perspective is very diverse. Where that's we have Dominican Republic share that financial inclusion is a problem, and where CBDC could be an option or could may not be, and it's there's a lot of questions need to be answered. Then from G that CBDC can deliver, but it has to be first defined as a policy goal. Then the rest can come along. Then for Maxwell, that's it's already a policy objective with your CBDC. That's exactly how CBDC is being designed for that specific purpose. Where that's Francisco just take a it's not a financial inclusion problem. It's more as a universal access problem. And so then design CBDC to meet the universal access goal. So then, as you can see, the same question, different central bank, different countries will, really just address it from a different perspective. Now that we have 5 minutes left, and I still have several questions, and then from the audience, we have several questions, and maybe just for each one of you, and you can feel free to just use your 1 minute to just share either the questions from the audience or one take-home message you want to be shared with the audience. From the questions, I still have questions around the risks. When you introducing new financial instrument or payment method to the system, and what are the risks associated to that? And from the audience, several questions are around the relationship between CBDC and cryptocurrency stable coins, and and then there's also some more specific questions related to digital identity and also digital authentication. So yeah, those are some of the questions that you can pick anyone you want to address, or you just want to share what is the takeaway for you for this session. Now that just Fabiola.
I want to refer to your question about the risks, because I think we should state very clearly that CBDC would be an official currency of a country, so would have the same treatment as the normal physical currency that we use today. And you were talking about fraud, technology impediments, and poor user understanding or experience. So you should apply the same rules that you have today in the fiat currency world to a CBDC world. But how do you manage? How do you implement? How do you move forward with this, having all those risks? I think we should, first of all, as Jim and Francisco mentioned, we should keep working together with the financial sector, with the private sector. This is not as only central banks. I mean, we are the issuers, but this is a network. I'm a network person, and all the projects I've worked in the last 20 years are related to interconnecting platforms. So CBDC would be a new player in the actual payments ecosystem that all our countries have. If you already have a payment system, a robust payment system, CBDC would be only an addition to that. It will not substitute the regular fiat currency or the cash. It would be another player, and maybe with the years, with changing generations, I mean, our generation would be gone by then it might take over the center stage. But this is not something to be afraid of. Also, at the beginning, the commercial banks were so worried about CBDC because they thought we're going to be taken out of the picture. No, they're part of the network. They're an important part of the network because they are the hands and feet of the central banks. They are the central bank connections with the people.
Thank you, Fabiola. I got a 1 minute warning, so then I want to also give others, at least 30 seconds to close. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I'll just say on risk, I'll say that, we have solved for double spending and for certain geographic disasters within our Project Hamilton, but we still have not solved for, denial of service, cyber attack. Those are things that you would develop later in the process, but very important. And we have developed tools to detect counterfeit or detect money on the chain that is inappropriate. So I'll just leave it there. But major areas technically, but also on implications for private sector actors like bank are important topics.
Thank you. Yeah, someone already shared the Project Hamilton report link. Feel free to check it out. Maxwell?
No, thank you very much, Xiaochen. In terms of race, also from our point of view, we have an objective to strike a good balance between financial inclusion and financial stability. And that is what is driving the way we design the ECD. And it has inbuilt features to ensure that we follow AML checks, due diligence, and the verification as part of the governance process will be done at the central bank and be treated the same way as we treat cash that we distribute through the commercial banks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Francisco.
Thank you. I think what is front and center, at least for us at the moment, is to get right the distribution model, to be able to get the right level of adoption and seamless interoperability in the ecosystem. CBDC, for it to be successful and achieve its public policy objectives, has to be easy to use and seamless, right? We need a coherent monetary system that includes easy moving from one form to another, and that consumers shouldn't think about any complications between those, just like they do today with cash and bank deposits. So the user experience is very important, but for us to be able to offer that, we require to really think, again, as I mentioned, distribution, adoption, and interoperability.
Thank you very much. And as this is such a rich discussion, this is only the beginning of a much longer conversation. And I hope that, all our audience enjoy the session as much as I do. And, from this, it's very clear that, central bank digital currency is just as its beginning. And for its global adoption, and there are a lot of very interesting questions to be answered. And from all of the speakers, it's very clear, and it's a space which allow private and public to just continue to have conversation, collaboration, and hopefully that's from the Payment Canada audience. And feel free to just jump in and learn together with the central banks, and also contribute to the conversation by bringing your expertise, bring your technology, and answer the right questions with your central bank, or provide your perspectives to the global community. So thank you for Payment Canada to organize this interesting panel, and I'm looking forward to continue this conversation with everyone. Thank you very much for our audience, and of course for our speakers.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.